How did we go from this
to this? Hi, I'm Ali, and welcome to the Curious Nook. We are a 5,100 square foot little homestead here on the California coast, and honestly, it has been a journey to be able to turn this place into a food forest, because in the beginning, all we heard was no. You can't do it, you don't have the space, there's no way that it can be done. And I was determined to do it. We knew that we wanted to be able to have a bigger space, but that wasn't feasible. Property is really expensive in California. Like, we couldn't afford something bigger, so we had to make do with what we had. And we had a little baby at the time, so we figured, hey, let's make the best out of the space. And because we had a baby at the time, we didn't really have the time or the energy to fence in our whole property. The fence back here was so rotted that we actually had to like patch it up with pieces of wood, and it wasn't doable. So we knew we had to fence that in, and just this front part of our property is 68 feet. We're in a corner lot, so it was a lot of fencing that needed to be done. So we figured it was going to be the best to contact a professional and have them handle it for us. Because we are in a busy intersection, we figured let's plant a lot of fruit trees in that side, and it's going to really like be a noise barrier for us. No, because that was like the thing that we kept being told, you can't do it. You don't have the space. So we eventually were like, okay, we need to talk to a permaculture person about this. Surely they will know something. The permaculture person was very against us putting in a bunch of trees. He said we didn't have the space for it. We wanted to take down some palm trees. He was like, nope, that's not gonna work. And then he eventually ghosted us and still charged us like $200 for his presence of being here, essentially telling us no. So it was a horrible experience. And it was really the kick in the butt that I needed to just dive deep and really read everything that I could about soil health, read everything that I could about building food forests and how much space do fruit trees need. So we ended up getting between 5 to 8 feet depending on the tree varieties. Root stocks, when you're building a food forest, are key. You want to be able to know that your varieties of trees are going to be dwarfing or semi-dwarf trees. And certain trees like cherry trees tend to outcompete their rootstocks, and they'll still get giant. So you want to be able to make sure that the trees that you're selecting are going to do well in that space. That's the number one thing. If you take nothing from this video, take that. You need to make sure that your rootstock is a good one and that you have dwarfing or semi-dwarfing trees, so they're able to all be in the 6 to 12 feet range. And that's going to be perfect for a small space. And you can also go cutting them and pruning them, which is going to be the other big essential thing for maintaining a food forest in a small lot. So once we figured out what we wanted to make out of the space, we walked through it with a notepad and a tape measure, and we just went through every single inch from where the fence line was to where our pathways would be. We measured how big we wanted the pathways to be. We wanted to make sure that we could get a wheelbarrow through. We wanted to figure out how we wanted to achieve it all. And the big thing was planning. I've told people countless times on social media that you have to plan it. And I'm not just saying that to delay it. I'm saying it because in a small space, it is key to be able to plan everything, so that once you put your trees in the ground, they're going to stay in that spot and you're not moving them around. Obviously, if something's not working, you're going to need to move it. but your big thing is going to be planning. So we walked all the spaces and we wanted to see what we could make out of them. So this area with the fountain, we wanted to be more of a calm, lush environment. And we ended up putting in, this year actually, we built my son a little dinosaur garden, something that he asked for, and we made it out of edible plants. The big goal was to just have this courtyard space be calming and relaxing space for us, a little bit more of a cozy nook, so we could chill here and still have like privacy. The backyards are big veg production area, so that's also where we have chickens, and where it's just our hangout spot for fire pit and cooking and just enjoying outside time, but not having to deal with a lot of road noise, which is something that we get a lot. So the front yard, which is where we actually get the most light, that's where our big food forest is. That's where we have 10 fruit trees, countless shrubs, multiple vining plants that actually fill in the fence behind me. So we have taken advantage of every nook and cranny, and it's still not done. We are 4 years into this, and we still have a section of the front yard that we're still building up because it takes time. I do not recommend trying to do this all at once because it's going to lead you to madness because there's so much that goes into it. Food forests are layered. So if you think of your normal forest, you have your big canopy trees, and then you have your understory plantings, and there's a lot that goes into it. And if you're just starting out, it's going to be a lot of work. One of the most important things that we did for our space was taking care of the soil. When we started, the soil was really trashed. It had no organic matter in it. A soil test even told us we had nothing in it. It was depleted of nutrients, depleted of organic matter. So once we got the fencing put in, that was something that we really dedicated a lot of time and energy to, and we're still doing it today. We incorporated a lot of compost into the soil. Our soil was so hard that you couldn't even find a worm in it. So we really had to be able to like turn that over, especially over in our corner. We had 2 big palm trees that we ended up getting rid of, and there was palm tree roots everywhere. So that was one of the areas that struggled the most. So we really had to incorporate lots of compost in there. And we're still cover cropping it, still composting a lot in there. And now we can like dig up a handful and we see worms, which is amazing. Considering that we didn't have anything before, it's great. So taking care of our soil was a big one. The second really big thing that we did was planting lots of native plants around. So here I have a golden currant that's a native plant. And this massive one behind me is a blue elderberry. And those are fantastic plants because they not only support the local bird life, they support butterflies and a whole host of other things. So we have native plants throughout. They're understory plants. We have native annual flowers like our California poppies that have really big taproots that break down the soil, and lupin that gives nitrogen to the soil. So everything in the food forest tends to have a role. It's not just planting a bunch of trees or a bunch of food. You need to think of how things are going to be built and how everything's going to have a role, because everything's going to be dependent on each other, just like a real forest. So you need to be able to plan everything accordingly. And really, I can't emphasize planning enough for this, because that's something that I am still doing and thinking about how everything is going. Because at the end of the day, as everything's growing in, you're going to have some things coming into your pathways that you're going to need to take care of. Or you're going to make sure that, hey, is this going to have enough room to grow? Or am I just going to be constantly having to prune it? The blue elderberry behind me, we knew it could get massive. This plant can actually be 30 feet by 30 feet. We obviously don't have the space for that, but we dedicated probably a good 12 feet next to it so it could have space to really grow, because this is our biggest noise blocker ever. When it fills in during the summertime, it actually filters out a lot of noise for us, which is a big advantage of the food forest, because especially now during the summer when everything is lush and filled in, it is amazing for a sound blocker, especially in a busy street. I'm sure you could probably see cars moving behind me. It's insanely busy here, and the forest that we've built here actually manages to block it. Building the food forest has been one of the things that I am the most proud of that we've done on this property, because we have an abundance of food that we're always getting. We're giving it to friends, we're donating it, and as the trees keep growing, we keep getting more and more of an abundance that we are preserving and just having throughout the season. Within the front yard space, we have a lot of perennial plants, but we're also planting vegetables as well. So we have tomatoes and peppers. Sometimes we've had cucumbers and all sorts of other things that we have throughout the year that's growing in our space. And one of the big things that we have to do for it is maintenance, and also planning our harvest and how we're going to process everything. And that's stuff that I'm going to be covering in some of the next videos that are going to be coming up, because a food forest is not something that is simple to do. I don't recommend it if you're just starting out and have never planted anything. Definitely do not, I cannot emphasize it enough, don't plant a food forest. If you're just starting out, start with maybe a tree or two or a couple plants. Don't go out and buy 30 trees or however many you can fit in your space, because it can be really overwhelming. So you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. We had done this process in stages. When we first started building up this front yard, a good chunk of it was done in the first year. We've added more in the following years, and I'm still adding to it to this day. And we're 4.5 years later. 4.5 years later, and I'm still adding to the space. So take your time with it, go at your own pace, because you want to make sure that this space is going to be enriching for you and not something that's going to burn you out. Because while gardening is amazing for your mental health, you can burn out super easily. So I hope that doesn't happen to you. Take care of yourself, and make sure to check out some of these videos that I have popped up here. Until next time, plant what brings you joy.